This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning, and we take a look at the political pieces we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 1st of July, 2020, and I am DM.
I'm Tom.
And I am JM. Let's get to the headlines of the day. In the Daily Nation, the return of sports betting. In the Standard, the new BBI army. And in the Star, how MP Gachagua received 5.7 billion shillings. Let's begin with the Star.
Yeah, the Star has a lot of money on its headline, and it's about the Madeira MP Rigathi Gachagua, who allegedly has received more than 5.8 million shillings in the billion, I beg your pardon, billion, it's the B, in 7 years. And these payments have now put him in trouble with anti-graft agencies, so he's being investigated. And apparently the money came from government payments. They went from government payments and then onto a company account, and on the same day went to his personal account. You know what, guys? This is 53 million US dollars. Imagine what that can buy. You can put a deposit to buy the moon with that kind of money. This guy means that he's been getting 829 million shillings a year. And of course, the other thing that the Star has mentioned is that he's a close ally of the deputy president.
Yep. For me, what's really shocking is that somebody who has been eating with their mouth open, somebody who's been benefiting so hugely from government tenders, can turn around and hit the owner of government, the owner of the tenders, speak so badly about the president. What did he expect? Remember a few weeks ago I mentioned the party leader will be taking no prisoners and he will show no mercy. This is the meaning, and this is a full-out assault on the character of this fellow. I don't know how he hopes to recover from this.
This is not corruption, guys. It's gluttony. And when I was reading this story, I thought, okay, so if he's an ally of the deputy president, he must be, he's a member of parliament, so he must be lower down that political line of association with the deputy president. If this level of accumulation, if at this level there's that amount of accumulation, I shudder to think.
For
how
me,
much
guys,
else is being
for me, I just sit and wonder. These fellows have seen RUTO allies being hounded to the courts. I mean, you continue saying such, conducting such attacks against the head of state. Absolutely, you will receive some repercussions. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know. You would expect that there would be someone at home saying, "Oh, please, slow down." But it just it seems that the more I don't know what they do, they give people in Karen, but it must be hella sweet.
Right, we have a 3-part criteria that we use to assess the headlines. Are they topical or speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, and thoughtful or just plain lazy? I think this is a groundbreaking piece, but let's put it in the parking as we consider the Daily Nation. Absolutely. The return of sports betting.
Yes, the return of sports betting, and I am so happy this happened yesterday. President Uhuru Kenyatta signed the finance bill into law, and in this finance bill was a proposal to have the 20% excise duty on sport betting removed, and it will be removed, and I think this will signal the return of betting companies. And I think the president told himself, let's be real, this betting industry creates a lot of jobs out there, and actually a lot of the sponsorships you see in our sporting industry are actually sponsored by betting companies. Yes, betting does have its bad effects, but I think just like booze, alcohol, cigarettes, it can also be regulated, and it can be regulated to a point where it doesn't become as destructive as it was. It's just a matter of how we push and pull, but I think it's a good move.
Well, I'm not feeling this one.
Let me tell you guys.
What do you think?
Africans, let me tell you, Africans can be very, I don't know, they're scared of new things, because look at sports betting across the world. You have in the UK and Germany worth trillions of dollars, trillions of euros, trillions. I mean, it brings in a lot of money. But it also takes care of a lot of families. So
because they're betting there, we should bet here?
No, not really. But I mean, if they do it there, why are we so scared?
You know, Jem always says that betting is supposed to be a rich man and woman's sport, and that the biggest bettor, one of the biggest bettors in the world, is the Queen of England herself, betting on horses and hounds. Here we're betting 20 shillings every day.
A poor country should not be betting. Poor people should not be. They cannot afford the luxury of betting.
I will disagree with you. Poor people in Europe, poor people in Australia, everywhere they do.
You see, 2M has the argument of they're doing it elsewhere, so we should do it here.
No, I'm saying,
this is my premise always.
Yeah.
Betting should be entertainment, not a source of income.
Exactly.
Because if it is your source of income and your livelihood, and you're betting away your rent, the Queen is not
you're literally betting
rent.
with your life, and people have ended their lives out of desperation.
Anyway, but as you always say to him, this one I'm on your side. We cannot be a nanny state.
Precisely.
These are adults. Let them engage in their vices that they like.
JM, have you heard of something called the Nairobi Stock Exchange?
Yes.
He wants to tell us that
it's also a form of betting.
It's a form of betting.
I know.
But the calculation there is much higher.
Once again, the people in Kibera are not listed on the NSC per se.
Well, guys, let me tell you, betting is not a social class sort of thing. I mean, as you say, yes, there are people who bet on hounds, on dogs to run in the UK, you know. But I mean, charity sweepstakes, charities, not necessarily. I mean, betting can take any form, GM.
They have social safety nets.
You don't have to bet.
Can come through for them.
You don't have to bet for horses. You don't have to bet for football. You can bet on so many other things.
We don't agree, but we let people engage in the vices of that.
Let's agree to disagree for now.
The President Uhuru Kenyatta has agreed with me.
Let's agree.
Congratulations.
Because he's also looking.
What can we say?
Because he's also looking at it from a macroeconomic
President Uhuru Kenyatta has
agreed. He's looking at it from a macroeconomic perspective.
And finally, we move to the Standard, the new BBI army. This is a headline full of promise, but once you turn the pages, it's really quite disappointing. And the story is that yesterday, the Yusuf Haji-led committee announced the completion of its assignment, which now means that the BBI ball is in the Court of Parliament, where a team of about 15 legislators, we're told, is supposed to execute this vision of the handshake, which, as you know, is supposed to expand the executive from a two-man executive to about a man/woman executive. So from the Ferrari to the Pro Box presidency. And it tells us the critical leaders who will be driving this motion, people like Amos Kimunya, Samuel Pagisho, who are some of the new leadership. And this is the agenda that they'll be driving. So I'll follow up from yesterday's headline about the route of parliamentary initiative to amend the constitution.
Absolutely.
So a bit repetitive. I would say
nothing new.
Standard.
This is not a headline, but an announcement, really.
So between the Star and the Daily Nation, whom do we give it to?
The Daily Nation.
I think the Daily Nation.
All right, so I'll toss the Star. And on to the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. We have a three-part criteria that we use to assess these. Are they humorous or dry, satirical or pessimistic, and finally effective or just plain lazy? Let's begin with the Daily Nation.
In the Daily Nation, we have the CS for Education, Magoha, CS Magoha, and he is caught in a clamp or a vise that is in motion, I suppose. There's a pencil there, and it says school reopening pressure. So this is just description of what the CS is dealing with right now. We are in the middle of a pandemic, but there's also conversation about how schools can be opened so that children and students return to learning. And that's, of course, huge pressure on the minister to ensure that this actually happens and that it happens safely.
That's an effective cartoon. I think we'll put in the parking bay.
Absolutely.
In the Standard.
In the Standard, we have Gado, and he has drawn a caricature of the governor of Kirinyaga, Anne Waiguru, and on the first box there, she's depicted as a dancer, and I suppose an erotic traditional dancer. On the first one says Treasury when she's in a dance stance. The second one says NYS, and she is upside down with her leg up. And the third one is Kirinyaga, and she is on her tiptoes with her leg up once again. And then finally, she's on the Senate platform, and I suppose taking a bow, and the audience is clapping for her. And you can also see that there is money on the ground, meaning that this is a paid erotic performance.
Yeah, quite very distasteful as usual from Gado.
I think so too, and I wouldn't even say as usual, because I've always thought that Gado is a notch above most cartoonists. His cartoons usually have depth. His commentary has depth. But today he's just shown that he's, the mark of an intellectual is being able to put forward a statement very strongly without being base. Yeah. But with this Anne Waiguru cartoon, it is base. It's sexual vilification. It's objectifying the governor solely because she's a woman. And what's the end goal? It's to humiliate her. It's to dehumanize her and to basically to dismantle her dignity, which, coming from Gado is very disappointing. And I know that cartoonists have creative license. Nakedness is acceptable. In fact, last week there was a cartoon, I think from either Ozone or Ndula, which had Anne Waiguru, still the same person, and she was taking a bath in a hot sufuria, and she was naked. But we didn't have the same commentary because this was it wasn't sexualizing her, or this wasn't a kind of debasing vilification.
I tell you,
he also had a cartoon of the president.
Yes.
Unclothed. We didn't have the same commentary. Why? Because he doesn't depict male politicians in the same way. He doesn't make them sexual or attractive. In fact, he does the opposite and makes them grotesque because he's doing a commentary. He's saying the emperor is naked. But in this case, I think Gado took it too far. Shame on you. Your sexism is showing.
Yeah. You know what? Let's rip it apart, huh? Rip it apart like Nancy Pelosi. Yeah. Was it Nancy Pelosi?
Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. And in the Star, what do we have?
The Star, you have, oh wow, DM. In the Star, you have WHO boss and caricature of Xi Jinping, president of China, and the Tedros. Is this called Tedros Adhanom? That's the WHO president, and he is opening up Pandora's box that is labeled COVID. And COVID is coming out there. And then next to him is Xi Jinping, who's coming out of a new swine flu outbreak coming out of China. I don't know whether you've heard this news, guys, that this outbreak, this strain of swine flu coming out of China is it is the most vicious flows coming out of those sides, and I think Beijing is under lockdown, complete lockdown.
Because scientists said that it's a candidate and has all the hallmarks of a pandemic.
Guys, what are we going to do about China?
Pandemic.
What are we going to do about? That's a very good question, JM.
Tough.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't want to say some things here and then I'm taken to ICC.
We'll see. Anyway, whom do we award our winning cartoon between the Star and the Nation?
I think we go with
I like the Star.
I like the Star.
Yeah, I like the Jinping's caricature and how he looks like he has a nice surprise, but it's
nice
not.
Surprise. It's swine flu.
A nasty surprise.
Of all things.
Yeah. All right. And so what is our final thought?
And now our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled The Burden of Bad Ideas, How Modern Intellectuals Misshape Our Society, by Heather MacDonald.
Indeed it is. So MacDonald wrote this book in the year 2001. And she's not only critiquing the bad ideas that have been proffered by public intellectuals, but she's also discussing and demonstrating how detrimental they have been in society, or making a commentary on the consequences that those bad ideas have had. So she gives examples of bizarre ideas that have actually translated into public policy, for instance, causing irreparable damage. And she accuses a long list of people, some of which are public health officials, university faculty, the professional elite, opinion leaders, including media publications. So she says that the problem with these groups of people is that they believe that we live in an unjust society. And so in setting out to fix this unjust society, they're causing further damage. Her ideas reminded me of the book that we looked at on Monday. It was The Madness of the Crowds by Douglas Murray, who was also asserting that now that we're in the 21st century, there's a lot of wrongs that have been righted. People who were previously oppressed are getting much more opportunities and freedoms than they did then. So any activism right now would only cause dissent and hate, which we disagreed with, but we also said that here we read all books, even those that we disagree with. There is something that I do agree with her, however. She says that society is now being shaped by modern ideals, or those things that are popular, instead of being shaped by the system or by people who were put in leadership to make decisions based on science, reason, or common sense. Now they're making decisions that are palatable and popular. And this takes away accountability from them. So most of the observations that she makes in the book are based draw from New York, but I think that they're applicable anywhere in the world. And one of the examples that she gives is that in 1990, the New York government provided free housing for homeless people with the intention of removing them from the street. But the response was that almost all of the homeless people that were reached refused to accept the public housing, the free public housing. And she said that this disproves the assertion that homeless people are on the streets because they don't have anywhere else to go. She said a lot of homeless people are on the streets because they want to be on the streets. And if you investigate further, you find that the problem is not having somewhere to go, but it's based on perhaps mental health issues or drug abuse or substance abuse. But because public policy did not make these considerations or did not put these factors into their decision-making processes, then they preferred bad ideas. And on top of this, they made other decisions that were related but became detrimental. For instance, policymakers or homeless advocates, for instance, prevented the enactment and the enforcement of certain urban laws, such as the ban on public urination or the ban on putting up camping on the streets. And so this was detrimental to the public, but they're saying we're doing this because homeless people have nowhere to go, and so they have to do these things. So the public health chapter in particular reminded me of another bad idea, this time in Africa. Back in 1999 in South Africa, the health department was distributing condoms. This was at the height of the AIDS pandemic. So they had an anti-HIV AIDS campaign and they were distributing condoms. And so they developed these pamphlets that had like a user manual for condoms, instructions on how to use it, because they were a relatively new thing. But the bad idea was this. They took the pamphlets and stapled them on the condoms for distribution. So they ended up distributing condoms with holes, which was counterproductive to the noble intention that they had. Bad idea.
We should look at the statistical abstract to see what the birth rates in that year were.
Or AIDS infections, because that's what they were addressing.
Absolutely. So one area the author addresses is education, something I'm very passionate about. And she critiques reforms in the education sector in the United States during the early 20th century. She termed them a bad idea, but quite frankly, I think they were a good idea. And we'll get into that. So at the beginning of the 20th century, we're told America did an about turn on their philosophy towards pedagogical training. Officially, that transition was referred to as progressivism. The push towards a philosophy that was more learner-oriented as opposed to trainer-oriented. And the prevailing view at the time was that forcing children into an existing curriculum would inhibit their self-actualization. just as forcing them into a neat row of desks would inhibit their creativity.
Yeah.
And so to work around that, the curriculum was then viewed more as a guide, not as a document to be implemented religiously. And they also gave the children autonomy in deciding what it is that they wanted to learn and what directions they wanted to go. And in that model of learning, the teacher was seen as an enabler, as an advisor, and not necessarily a transmitter of a pre-existing body of ideas, of texts and facts.
Yeah.
The child was required to construct his own knowledge rather than passively receiving it. Now, to date, this, I think, still serves as the philosophical foundation of the American education system. And I suppose that's why many people look at it and think it is woolly. It is weak when they compare it against the Asian model, when they compare it against the British model, even the Kenyan 844 model, for example, which is more rigorous, more in-depth. And that difference in approaches between the laissez-faire philosophy and the traditional drilling down philosophy that we have in a country like Kenya is best captured by a Greek poet known as Archilochus. Now he said, the fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one great thing. And as a country, I want to just ask, what ratio of foxes to hedgehogs should we aspire for? Germany, for example, has a very efficient system where by the time you're about age 13, they have shepherded you into either the fox or the hedgehog direction. Now they prefer hedgehogs. So out of every 3 students, probably 2 are going to go the hedgehog direction.
And that is based on what? Their personality or their response to the...
Based on the personality, based on their performance, their interest. And so those early foundational years are critical. In one sense, for the macro economy, it's a good thing because then you're fairly certain about the kind of skill set that you want and that you want to curate for the country. But I guess it's a bit limiting in the sense that by the time you're about 13 and you're moving on to upper classes, you have less autonomy to go in a different direction. And so those are the foxes and the hedgehogs. The foxes are able to explore the world. They're able to have a bigger picture of issues. They are, I think, also more enlightened because they're encouraged to be reflective and inward looking and to explore what it is that they prefer to do. And then you've got the hedgehogs. The hedgehogs usually are very grounded in depth, in theory, and they're able to pioneer innovations. And so in my view, hedgehogs are probably a better thing. And in fact, human progress probably depends solely on and mostly on hedgehogs. And I say that because hedgehogs are the thinkers. They drill down into one topic and they really refine it and make advancements within it. And the thinkers always will rule the doers. So ultimately, hedgehogs are superior.
So foxes are laborers.
Foxes are laborers. They're wishy-washy. They're woolly. They're great communicators, though. But they're shallow.
I think a country needs both.
By the time I'm done, you and I will agree. Now, I was doing the chapter on law school humbug, and this is very much about critical race theory and how law affects race. Now, but I was reading this chapter and something caught my eye. So I said, forget about that critical race theory. I will focus on this. Now, there is a University of Pennsylvania law professor, and her name is Regina Austin. Now, she decided to give advice to black people. And she told them to embrace the criminals within the African American community as a form of resistance to white oppression. Here's what she said. She said, reliance on the traditional values of hard work, respectable living, and conformity to law may, under certain circumstances, be a perfectly progressive maneuver for the community to make. But on the downside, traditional values intensify divisions within the black community. Now, in other words, here's what she was saying. She was saying that African Americans should discard the distinction between lawful and unlawful, and embrace the criminals within the African American community as a form of resistance to white oppression. Here's what she said. She said, reliance on the traditional values of hard work, respectable living, and conformity to law may, under certain circumstances, be a perfectly progressive maneuver for the community to make. But on the downside, traditional values intensify divisions within the black community. Now, in other words, here's what she was saying. She was saying that African Americans should discard the distinction between lawful and criminal activity and find a middle ground. And that middle ground is what she calls hustling. Now, at this point, I felt like I was having a conversation between Hitha and myself. Now, so I asked her, take a picture of hustling and tell us how it looks like. And this is what she says. She says, hustling, in my view, is like a clerk in the store stealing the employer's merchandise and helping their friends out, or stealing from their employers and enriching themselves. Never mind that the employer themselves could be black. All right. Now, in summation, you have to steal in order to grow yourself. But also, here's what she said. She said she also argued in favor of teen pregnancy, which she claimed that it had a positive effect on teens' schooling. Now, because I thought I was having a conversation with her, I thought I would have asked her the following. I wanted to ask her if she's heard of the Hustler Nation. But then, because in reality I was not having a discussion with her, then I will not ask her.
No, those are bad ideas that she had. Yeah.
So, on a day where we had a winning headline from the Daily Nation and the winning cartoon from the Star, I will leave you with a quote on education from Benjamin Franklin and information. And Franklin says, Tim was so learned that he could name a horse in 9 languages. So ignorant that he bought a cow to ride on.
What?
So let me break that down. Tim was knowledgeable, but he lacked understanding. He had the information, but he lacked the comprehension. And that is the takeaway, dear viewers. Knowledge, yes, is the principal thing, but in all you're getting, please get understanding. Knowledge is only a means to a greater end. That end is comprehension.
So knowledge is at the bottom, then comprehension. Can I add one more at the top?
Yes.
JM?
Yes.
Enlightenment. And I got this from Robin Sharma's book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. He said we should acquire knowledge, yes, but then if you couple that with an understanding of yourself, then you reach the level of enlightenment.
Absolutely. I couldn't put it better. Have a good evening.